I still remember the exact words she spat at me, sharp and unapologetic like a whip. "If you won't babysit 5 kids, don't come." My stomach dropped, and the room seemed to tilt slightly as if the universe itself had decided to side with her. 5 kids. My sisters, smiling as though this were a perfectly reasonable demand, didn't seem to notice the weight of her words, and then the silence of my parents cut deeper than her sharpness. They nodded, almost in agreement, as if my presence or absence was irrelevant unless I agreed to be their free childcare for the holidays. I stood frozen, the edges of my vision blurry with disbelief. How could they? How could my own family, the people who were supposed to have my back, no matter what, side with her without so much as a second thought? I had grown up thinking that fairness and loyalty meant something in this house, that sacrifices were acknowledged, not exploited. But here I was, dismissed, my feelings treated like a whisper in a hurricane of entitlement. The anger didn't come immediately. At first there was shock, disbelief, and a quiet, searing hurt. I replayed the scene in my head repeatedly, the echo of her voice twisting around every memory of my own sacrifices. I had spent countless hours babysitting neighbors' kids for free, giving up weekends for family chores, helping when no one asked me to, and yet here I was, being treated as if I were the problem for refusing an impossible demand. It was like every effort I had ever made was erased in a single sentence. My sister's smug expression didn't help. She leaned back, crossing her arms, like a queen passing judgment over her kingdom. "What? I'm asking nicely," she said, though there was nothing nice about the tone. And when I looked at our parents, hoping for at least a flicker of support, I found only agreement, only the unmistakable shrug of people who thought her request was normal, reasonable, even just. The betrayal was sharp, twisting and sudden. It left a hollow ache in my chest. I wanted to argue. I wanted to shout until my throat burned, to make them see how unfair this was, how much it hurt. But the words caught in my throat. They wouldn't understand. No, they had already decided. Their minds were made up. My sister's happiness, her comfort, was more important than my boundaries, my feelings, my autonomy. My entire being screamed against it, but I could see the battle was already lost. And then it hit me, the clarity, cold and almost cruel. If they thought I was expendable, if they thought my presence was nothing without my compliance, then maybe they didn't deserve my effort, my generosity, my time. The thought felt like fire in my veins. I had money saved, plans made, all the things I had contributed for this Christmas season. Suddenly, it wasn't just a holiday, it was a chance to show them, to make them feel even a fraction of the panic and loss they had imposed on me. I took a deep breath, steadying the storm inside me. My voice, when it finally came, was low, sharp, and quiet enough to make them lean in, curious and cautious. "Then my 18,000 wasn't invited to Christmas either," I said, letting the words land like stones on frozen ground. There was no hesitation, no doubt. I could already see the flicker of realization cross their faces, the sudden shift from assumed control to panic. I didn't have to raise my voice, didn't have to beg for acknowledgement. The truth was enough. I spent the next hour quietly canceling all my travel plans, confirming flights back home wouldn't happen, redirecting gifts, and checking every detail twice. The fury simmered into a sharp, methodical clarity. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to fight physically. I could make my absence speak louder than any argument. And as I sent the final email, my phone began to buzz, calls, texts, frantic messages flooding in, but I didn't answer. Not yet, not until the first ripple of chaos hit home. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and satisfaction. My heart ached because family had failed me, but my mind was alive with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas, I would be the one they noticed, even if it was too late. Alone in my room, the quiet pressed against me like a physical weight. The house seemed too small, the walls closing in with the echo of their betrayal. I sank onto my bed, staring at the ceiling as the adrenaline of confrontation slowly drained, leaving a hollow, simmering rage in its place. My sister's words and my parents' silence replayed over and over, each repetition sharpening the edges of my anger. I could still hear the smugness in her voice, the certainty that she had won. But she hadn't, not yet. I closed my eyes and let my mind wander to all the times I had been overlooked. Every weekend I had spent cleaning up after family events, every holiday I had sacrificed my own plans, every little effort I had made that had been dismissed or forgotten, everything came rushing back. My parents had applauded my sister for her helpfulness, while ignoring the countless ways I had contributed. And now, in this single, sharp moment, they had sided with her, painting me as the unreasonable one for refusing a selfish demand. It was infuriating, and the sting of betrayal cut deeper than I wanted to admit. My anger began to crystallize into something sharper, something strategic. I wasn't going to beg for recognition or validation. That wasn't my style, and frankly, I didn't deserve to. If they wanted to erase me, I could erase myself from their picture of Christmas. My mind, still thrumming with adrenaline, began to calculate. Cancel the flights. Redirect the gifts. Make sure they felt the absence, felt the chaos, even if they refused to admit it. Every detail mattered. I could feel the satisfaction of control tightening in my chest, the power of making them scramble without me. I picked up my phone and began crafting messages with cold precision. Each word was deliberate, each email carefully phrased so there was no room for misunderstanding. Travel plans canceled. I typed, my fingers steady despite the fury burning under my skin. GIFs redirected. I added, imagining their faces when they realized the disruption. The small thrill of planning revenge was addictive. Each action was a reminder that I wasn't powerless. I could make them feel the consequences of ignoring me, of siding with selfishness over fairness. Yet beneath the anger, there was a softer, more painful current. I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted them to see me, to respect me, to understand the depth of what it meant to be overlooked, dismissed, and devalued. But I knew that wouldn't happen without a lesson, without a mirror held up to their selfishness. The thought was bittersweet. Revenge felt necessary, but it also left a bitter aftertaste of sadness. Family should be where you feel safe, loved, and seen, and yet, in that moment, I realized that love and recognition had to be earned, or at least defended, even within my own home. Hours passed as I methodically finalized my plans. The $18,000 that had been earmarked for gifts and travel now became a symbol of my autonomy. They couldn't force me to give it or participate in a system that ignored me. I imagined the panic that would spread once they realized I wasn't coming. I imagined the chaos of 5 kids without my help, the frantic calls, the endless texts. My chest tightened with a strange combination of anticipation and guilt. I was crossing a line, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was standing on solid ground rather than being pushed around. When the final message was sent, I leaned back, letting the tension leave my body in a long exhale. My phone immediately began to explode. Calls, texts, frantic group messages. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted them to feel the absence, the weight of my decision before I even spoke. Watching them scramble from a distance felt satisfying. Not cruel, exactly, but necessary. I had been invisible for too long, and now I was asserting my presence in the only way they would notice. As darkness fell outside my window, I sat in the quiet of my room, emotions tangled and raw. Hurt, rage, anticipation, and sorrow all intertwined into a knot I could neither ignore nor untangle. I knew Christmas would be different this year. It wouldn't be the peaceful, joyous holiday my family expected. And deep down, I realized that I didn't want it to be, not until they understood what it meant to dismiss someone you claim to love. The house was a storm before I even arrived. Or rather, because I didn't. From my vantage point several states away, I could watch the dominoes fall, and each collapse brought a quiet, simmering satisfaction. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages piled up by the minute, from my sister's frantic texts to my parents' calls that went straight to voicemail. They didn't realize yet that the calm I once brought to the holidays was gone. I had withdrawn it deliberately, and the void I left behind quickly became impossible to ignore. Photos began appearing on social media, my sister attempting to juggle 5 kids, trying to keep everyone fed, entertained, and reasonably clean. Her face was tight with tension, the fake smiles cracking around the edges. I had seen that expression before, the one that comes when someone realizes they've overestimated their own ability to handle chaos. My parents were there, wringing their hands, trying to intervene, but too late, too scattered, too late to bring order. And I felt something I hadn't expected, a subtle, bittersweet pride. This wasn't cruelty, it was consequence, and they were finally seeing what my absence meant. Meanwhile, messages flooded my phone. "Please, can you come back?" My sister begged in a group text. "We can't do this without you." My parents chimed in separately, guilt dripping from every word. I didn't respond immediately. I let it linger, savoring the moment. For once, I wasn't the one running to fix things, to pick up the slack, to be the invisible backbone of their holidays. They were the ones scrambling, the ones realizing that support can't be demanded without reciprocation. And yet, in the quiet corners of my satisfaction, there was a twinge of regret. I could feel the pang of loneliness, the ache of being excluded from what should have been a warm, festive time. I wasn't cruel, I simply refused to be invisible anymore. The $18,000 I had originally planned to spend on gifts and flights now felt like armor, a shield I could use to reclaim my power. I had rerouted the funds to a trip I had always dreamed of, a small reward to myself for finally standing up, and to remind myself that my worth wasn't tied to anyone else's convenience. By the second day, the tension had peaked. My sister was exhausted, snapping at the kids, fumbling meals, and pacing frantically around the house. My parents were torn between scolding and supporting, caught in a cycle of guilt and helplessness. I could feel the satisfaction building like a slow, steady burn. This was what had happened every year when I had silently borne the weight of responsibilities no one else wanted, and now they were facing it without me, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Even as I watched the chaos unfold, I sent small, carefully calculated messages. A photo of me at the cafe in a city I'd always wanted to visit. A text about how peaceful and relaxing it was here, far from the screaming children and holiday stress. The subtle undertone was clear. I was enjoying my time, thriving and unbothered by the panic I had caused. Each notification that lit up my phone from my frantic family was a reminder that I had finally reclaimed the respect I had been denied for so long. By the night of Christmas Eve, my sister was sitting amidst a pile of wrapping paper and empty cookie trays, her hair disheveled and her smile forced. My parents were exhausted, their faces shadowed with guilt. They called me repeatedly, pleading, negotiating, even attempting to bribe me with promises of recognition next year. I didn't answer, but I let my heart soften slightly. I didn't need to be cruel. I only needed to be absent, needed them to see, feel, and understand the consequence of their choices. As the night deepened and the house fell into a restless, chaotic quiet, I leaned back in my hotel room chair, a cup of coffee warming my hands. The revenge wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, it was subtle, devastating in its silence. And as the lights twinkled across the city outside my window, I realized something important. Sometimes the absence of someone who is taken for granted can speak louder than any argument. For the first time, they were listening. By the time I finally returned home after the holidays, the house felt different. Not louder or chaotic, but heavy with the residue of what had happened. I stepped through the door quietly, letting the familiar scent of pine and cinnamon wash over me. My sister, who had been so confident and untouchable just weeks ago, froze when she saw me. The kids were excited to see me, running up for hugs, unaware of the tension that lingered between the adults. And my parents, their faces told the story better than any words could. Guilt, regret, and a cautious respect mingled there, a mixture I had never seen before. The first conversation wasn't easy. My sister, still flushed from the chaos of Christmas, tried to laugh it off, but it was forced. I didn't think it would be this hard, she admitted quietly, almost ashamed. I didn't jump in to scold her or remind her of every frantic moment they had endured without me. I let her words hang in the air, heavy with truth. She needed to face the reality of her own actions, to understand that her demands and my parents' blind support had consequences. My parents approached me next, their voices soft and careful, a stark contrast to the firmness they had shown before. "What we didn't realize," my mom began, and I felt a flicker of the old warmth, the one I had longed for during all those times I had been overlooked. "We should have listened. We should have supported you." I nodded, listening, not interrupting, letting the moments stretch. I wanted them to truly understand, not just apologize because it sounded right. Over the following days, the tension slowly began to ease. Though it never disappeared completely, I found myself reflecting on the past weeks, on the anger that had burned so hot inside me and the satisfaction of watching them grapple with the chaos I had left behind. Revenge had been sweet, undeniably so, but it had also revealed something deeper. Boundaries were necessary. My absence had been a statement, but it had also been a lesson in self-respect. I realized that being respected by others often starts with respecting yourself first. Conversations began to change. My sister admitted more than once that she had relied on me too much, that she had taken my presence for granted. And for the first time, she truly seemed to see me, not just as the sibling who could babysit, or the one who quietly managed responsibilities, but as a person with feelings, limits, and the right to say no. My parents, too, started to acknowledge my contributions more honestly, no longer brushing off my efforts or taking them for granted. It wasn't a sudden shift, but the seed of change had been planted. Even as the family slowly returned to normal routines, I knew I had changed. I had learned that standing up for myself didn't make me selfish, it made me visible. It made me someone whose presence and efforts couldn't be ignored. I also realized that revenge, while satisfying in the short term, was not the end goal. The real victory was reclaiming my voice, my space, and my sense of worth within a family that had repeatedly failed to see it. That Christmas, though painful and chaotic, became a turning point. My sister still tested boundaries, as siblings always do, but she did so with a new awareness. My parents were more thoughtful, more careful with their assumptions, more willing to listen. And I had learned to protect myself, to assert my needs, and to let my absence speak when words failed. Sitting quietly in the living room, sipping a cup of cocoa as the last of the decorations glowed softly, I smiled to myself. I had survived the betrayal, navigated the chaos, and emerged stronger. Christmas had been a test of patience, courage, and resolve, and I had passed. I realized that sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't anger or punishment, it's standing tall, setting boundaries, and showing the people who doubted you that you will never be invisible again.